On Mark Dolan tonight, in my big opinion, does the Labour Party have a problem with women? When did speaking up for women's hard-won sex-based rights make you a bad person? I'm not pulling my punches. That is my big opinion monologue in just 3 minutes' time. My Mark Meets guest is Lord Peter Lilly, a political icon and life peer who served as a cabinet minister in the governments of Margaret Thatcher and John Major. In the big question, should all MPs be forced to publish their tax returns? Would you like to see their financial details? And in the news agenda, should King Charles have a budget coronation? Also, is the city of San Francisco in America right to pay every victim of slavery $5 million each? And should couples that split up return the engagement ring? I've still got mine. I'll see you after the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Police have released a mugshot of the man believed to be the suspect of the mass shooting in California that killed at least 10 people. He's believed to be Asian and aged between 30 and 50 years old. Police are also investigating a white cargo van following the shooting. There are reports of a current standoff involving that van. Thousands of people had gathered in the city of Monterey Park near Los Angeles when a man opened fire at a Lunar New Year festival, injuring another 10 people. At least one person is in a critical condition in hospital. The LA County Sheriff says we need to get this person off the street as soon as possible.
Very preliminary description has been described as a male Asian. We're interviewing victims and witnesses. We've gotten different descriptions of one suspect. So when I say it's preliminary, please again be patient with us. We are here to tell you that we are utilizing every resource to apprehend this suspect in what we believe to be one of the county's most heinous cases.
We'll bring you more on that story as we get it. Now, a cabinet minister has told GB News Nadhim Zahawi has the Prime Minister's support. That's following allegations about his tax affairs. The Conservative Party chairman's admitted he reached a settlement with HMRC, believed to be almost £5 million, following an error over a multi-million-pound shareholding in the polling company YouGov. Labour has called his position untenable, but Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says he believes Mr Zahawi has paid his taxes.
I don't know any more details than what he has already put in the public domain. I don't think it would be right or proper for me to speculate or guess about any further details about his tax affairs. But he has been a successful entrepreneur, building a company which has paid tax, employing people who have paid taxes, and he has himself paid tax, a considerable amount, because he's been successful.
At least 380 migrants have arrived in the UK on 10 small boats overnight, making it the busiest day of Channel crossings so far this year. GB News understands a few other boats have also set off early this morning but haven't yet made it to the UK. The boats were monitored by French naval vessels, which only intervene if the migrants get into difficulties. Today's arrivals bring the total number of those crossing the English Channel this year to 530. Family, friends and fans gathered to attend a memorial service for Lisa Marie Presley, held at her father's estate in Memphis, Tennessee. The US singer and only child of Elvis Presley had been laid to rest at the Graceland mansion she inherited from her rock and roll father. She died on the 12th of January after reportedly suffering a cardiac arrest at her home. She was 54. Among those who paid tribute were the Duchess of York and Lisa Marie's mother, Priscilla, who called her an icon and a superhero. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. You're with GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan tonight.
My thanks to Tatiana, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. In my big opinion monologue in just a moment, does the Labour Party have a problem with women? When did speaking up for women's based sex rights make you a bad person? In the big question, should all MPs be forced to publish their tax returns? My Mark Meets guest is one of the best-known politicians in the country, Lord Peter Lilly, a political icon and life peer who served as a cabinet minister in the governments of both Margaret Thatcher and John Major. We'll be asking him about Brexit. What does he think of Rishi Sunak? And will we ever tackle the migrant crisis? At 10:30 sharp, we'll have tomorrow's papers with full panel reaction and in the news agenda. Should King Charles have a budget coronation? Is the city of San Francisco right to pay every victim of slavery $5 million each? And should couples that split up return the engagement ring? Or, ladies, do you keep everything? Reacting to those stories and many more are my fantastic panel of actress and comedian Sajila Kershi, broadcaster and columnist Ali Miraj, and political and social commentator Lynn May. Now, I want to hear from you throughout the show. The best bit of the programme is when you get in touch. mark@gbnews.uk. This programme has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. So, for the next 2 hours, big debates, big guests, and always big opinions. Let's start with this one. When did standing up for women and their hard-won sex-based rights make you a bad person? The moral compass of the West is now so topsy-turvy. By defending the idea of female-only spaces, apparently you're a bigot. So why does all of this matter? Well, because I'm afraid that men have always been and always will be a predatorial threat to women. Men are physically stronger and can overpower most women. And the vast majority of sexual violence suffered by women is at the hands of men. So to give men calling themselves female unfettered access to women's changing rooms, women's toilets, and even women's refuge centres and rape crisis shelters is patently an outright assault on women's safety. When did standing up for women's rights make you a bad person? As a son to an amazing mother, as a brother to amazing sisters, with amazing female friends and brilliant female colleagues, it's something that I will do until my dying day. If only more men could do just the same. Like, for example, the cervix-free leader of the opposition, Keir Starmer, who gets tongue-tied in interviews just trying to define what a woman is, even though he's married to one. He's been very quiet recently as one of his own MPs attacked a female member of parliament simply for the crime of bravely telling her story of when she felt threatened by a man in a previously female-only space. Here is what Miriam Cates, MP, had to say, and let me warn you, it's powerful stuff.
There are areas where only women are allowed. I had an experience recently in a restaurant where a man dressed as a woman walked into the toilets. I was on my own in the toilets. He stood behind me and stared at me into the mirror, looking at me in my eyes. Now, I have no idea if he intended me any harm, but my instinct, my evolved instinct as a woman was to be frightened, because unlike almost any other species, women are far less powerful than men. We can't defend ourselves. That's why we have... No, it's a fact. The difference in strength between men and women is phenomenal. That's why we have separate sex categories for sport.
Can you imagine how she felt being stared out by that man in the bathroom? And what was her reward for that brave and principled speech? Well, she was yelled at by a bloke. How unsurprising. Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle, who we're told spent the afternoon heckling anyone that he disagreed with. And on this occasion, in relation to the particular MP you've just heard, he absolutely let rip.
Was probably one of the worst transphobic dog whistle speeches that I've heard in an awful long time. The idea of linking trans people with predators, frankly, is disgusting, and you should be ashamed.
How on earth is her story, in any sense, dog whistle politics? He then went across the chamber and sat on the Tory benches. Now, was that to intimidate her or make her feel uncomfortable? You tell me. Do Labour have a problem with women? Labour MP Rosie Duffield, who spoke to me on this programme last weekend, seems to think so. Here's what she wrote this week in an article following that MP's angry behaviour. She wrote, after Tuesday's outburst came the silence, not from Russell Moyle, but from Keir Starmer's office. It's a cycle I've come to know well. First, speak up in defence of women's sex-based rights, and then face the consequences alone. She goes on, in 2019, it was hard enough trying to convince my constituents that Labour wasn't anti-Semitic. In the next election, when they inevitably ask whether Labour is sexist, I'm not sure I'll be able to do the same. Now, Lloyd Russell Moyle has apologised for his behaviour, and he is clearly deeply concerned about the rights of trans people, who are some of the most abused and prejudged members of our society. I have close friends who have transitioned, and they need support and love, as well as rights and recognition. And he's right that you cannot conflate a trans person with being a sex attacker. Of course not. But in the end, his own aggressive behaviour is typical of so many pushing this so-called trans ideology, which denies the very principle of biological sex altogether. An ideology that wants biological men competing in female sport, that wants biological men fully intact in women's prisons, and that wants male paedophiles to be referred to in the press as females that have abused children. Now, that is a libel on all women and a lie to boot. Attacking and erasing women isn't just a byproduct of this new religion, it's the deliberate outcome of it. Women are being cancelled by design, and the way that this policy is being pursued has violent and threatening undertones. After all, why does gender-critical author J.K. Rowling now require 24/7 security? It just demonstrates how regressive and medieval woke culture is, that figures, for example, from the Scottish National Party pushing this crazy ideology are happy to march on the streets alongside placards threatening to behead women. Decapitate women that won't fall into line. That's progress, is it? Women have faced oppression, abuse and attack from the opposite gender for centuries. It is the story of history. And with gender ideology, it's basically men bullying women all over again. It's dogma in a dress, and it's hatred in heels. Now, what's your reaction? Do Labour have a problem with women? Keir Starmer would argue that he has promoted so many women to his shadow cabinet, including the shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who is a very impressive politician. He would argue that there are more female MPs in the Labour Parliamentary Party, and he would argue that Labour could not be more pro-women. But what's your view? Do let me know, mark@gbnews.uk. And how do you react to the treatment of Miriam Cates there, that MP, sharing a personal story about feeling threatened in a female-only space? Let me know your thoughts. I'll get to your opinions in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's hear the views of my panel. Comedian and actress Sajila Kershi, broadcaster and columnist Ali Miraj, and political and social commentator Lynn May. Let me start with you, Sajila. A warm welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. What's your view?
Oh, gosh, you know, what hasn't been said on this issue? I think what it is, Labour is actually, because of the anti-Semitism in the past, they will not step up and say what they really mean, especially Starmer. It's really frustrating because he needs to really stand by the women of this country, and by evading that question, it's, I mean, let's face it, misogyny's been around since caveman. Well, actually, Adam and Eve, you know, Eve was blowing blame for the apple in the cave. I don't know, the man, hunter-gatherer man, and then what did the woman keep the cave even without any appliances back in the day? So misogyny's always been there. And I liked your phrase, like, this is, you know, dogma in a dress. I almost want, what we don't hear is actually from trans themselves having a conversation like we're having now. And I would like to see more of that, because I kind of think I want to understand. I don't want to go down the kind of road where I think we're going is where transphobia is actually increasing because of the few that have got, bad views or whatever, and that kind of mars everything. I want to know, because I don't believe that there's violence, so much violence against trans as has been said, because I haven't seen any evidence of it. So I'd like to see that evidence, but I'd also like to hear from real trans women who have, transitioned, to hear what they've got to say, because I think we're going around this conversation round and around, and I think men have taken over this conversation one way or another, and I'm going to let Ali, another man, take over.
Well, that's right. Well, look, Ali and I are just blokes.
You're not. You're special. You're special blokes.
Bless you for that. Keep the flattery coming. But Lynn May, what's your view about this? Do Labour have a problem with women? What's your reaction to the behaviour of Lloyd Russell Moyle in the House of Commons?
I'm just so happy, and I was so proud to see Rosie Duffield and Miriam stand up in the House of Commons and say whatever they needed to say to get the point across. And to hear people shout them down, especially a man, pointing his finger when all she was essentially doing was explaining her experience, and then Keir Starmer not coming and saying anything in her defence, I think it's absolutely disgusting. And I'm not surprised that it was trending shortly after saying Labour losing women, and they will, because it's one thing being inclusive and understanding where trans people are coming from, but that MP, he doesn't even seem like he cares about women. Yeah. If he cared about women, he would actually listen to her experience and say, OK, we understand that, but we need to be careful with the language so as to not conflate predators with people that want to transition. But he did not care. He did not even listen to her. So I'm really proud that they've said that. And I think you raise a good point when you say the Labour Party are scared. They're scared to address grooming gangs. They're scared to address sticking up for women. They're all in the name of inclusivity. When are they going to find their balls?
There you go. Well, somebody that owns quite a substantial pair is Ali Miraj. What's your view?
I didn't realise that would be a topic of discussion.
So I'm told.
Mark, look, I think what we need to do here is take the heat out of this debate completely. If you're a trans person, you want to be treated with respect and dignity. If there was a trans woman or a trans man in front of me, I would address them in the way that they wanted to be addressed. I think that that's a decent, humane, civilised thing to do. But there is a distinction to be made, and this is where the crux of the debate is, around biology and gender. And there are two issues coming out of this. One is an issue of security for women. That is a serious issue that needs to be dealt with carefully, sensibly, and sensitively. But the other issue is one of identity. And what do I mean by that? I mean that women themselves are feeling that their identity is in some way being undermined by this, or at least being challenged. And you've got a situation now, Mark, where gender always used to be considered to be the social construct. We had all these stereotypes and, what men should do, what women should do. We're beyond that now, thankfully. But now biology is becoming a social construct, that you can biology doesn't matter anymore. And I think that is posing some problems. What I would like to see, actually, and I think this is a place for something like a citizens' assembly where you get members of the public together to go and carefully consider these issues, deliberate and come up with some ideas, because it's too fraught right now. The political debate around this issue is toxic, and it needs to be handled carefully. And you see this in the Scottish issue right now, where I'm seriously concerned that 16-year-olds could be effectively transitioning. I think what we might have, Mark, in the next 10 years or so, or 20 years, is people coming back and saying, I was 13 or 16, and no one stopped me. I want to sue you for not telling
you. It's happening already.
Right. So Ali Miraj, you are so right, and that's why we've got to have provision, and we must have a grown-up, calm conversation. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. Let's do that tonight. What is your view? Do you agree with Sajila, Lynn, or Ali, or me? I mean, God forbid. Drop me a line, mark@gbnews.uk. My Mark Meets guest at 10 is one of the most experienced politicians in the country. It's Lord Peter Lilly, served under Thatcher and Major. What does he think of Rishi Sunak? What does he think of Brexit? How is it playing out? But next up, should all MPs be forced to publish their tax return? We will hear from the Labour MP for Birmingham Perry Barr, Khalid Mahmood, and politics legend Anne Widdecombe. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. Lord Peter Lilly is my Mark Meets guest at 10. Can't wait for that. Also, a shocking story in Scotland. They're taking away meat from school dinners in Edinburgh. My reaction at 10 o'clock. Plant-based is coming. You have been warned. How about this in response to my big opinion? Good speech, Mark, says Angie. As a woman, what I find extremely offensive about the trans debate is that the Labour Party will not stand up for the rights of women, with the exception of Rosie Duffield. Her treatment by other Labour MPs is disgusting. Delphine says, Mark, Labour are in the old ages. They don't like women, and the female MPs on the front bench are disgusting for not backing the female MPs being hassled by Labour male MPs. And last but not least, Jackie says, hi, Mark, great monologue, especially about women and women-only safe spaces. But I noticed that GB News has unisex toilets. Well, let me tell you, Jackie, we do have unisex toilets, and it's because we're a start-up with a tiny budget and we rent the buildings. So it's out of our control, but we don't like them. And I was in those toilets the other day and I saw the wrong end of Nigel Farage. And that was not for the faint-hearted, let me tell you. Nigel, by the way, back tomorrow at 7. Look, let's crack on. Let's do this. Let me tell you, Nigel's got a great body. Now, this is the big question in which we tackle a major news story of the day. Tonight, the former Chancellor and now Chairman of the Conservative Party, Nadine Zahawi, has said an error in his tax affairs was accepted by HMRC as having been careless and not deliberate. In a statement, he said he wanted to address any confusion about his finances after claims he tried to avoid tax and then had to pay it back. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is satisfied with Mr Zahawi's account, suggesting he may well stay on in his current role. Labour have said there was a whole list of questions that still need answering. The party has called on Mr Zahawi to publish all correspondence with HMRC to get the full picture. Now, The Guardian have reported that Mr Zahawi had to pay back the tax he owed with a 30% penalty, and the total amounts to, wait for it, £4.8 million. Now, we're not able to bear out that figure, but it begs a wider question. Should all MPs be forced to publish their tax returns? Would you like to see their tax returns? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome former Conservative Government Minister, best-selling author and television personality Anne Widdecombe, the star of Mark Dolan Tonight Every Sunday, and a warm return to the programme from Labour MP for Birmingham Perry Barr, Khalid Mahmood. Lovely to have you with us again, Khalid. Do you think all MPs should publish their tax returns?
Well, pleasure to be with you both. No, I don't think that. I don't think it's important.
You got something to hide, Khalid? You got something to hide?
Oh, come on. No, I've got absolutely nothing to hide. This is just absolutely absurd, Mark. And for you to say that on this programme is complete nonsense. We want to attract the best people coming into Parliament, and by stripping them of all dignity, which is what this is about, it doesn't do that. We have standards where we report all of our interests, do that. We have HMRC who looks at our annual returns and does something. No, I don't have anything to hide. I'm quite happy for the HMRC to go through them, and if there's anything wrong with which they do every year to do that. All we're doing is pushing Parliament back and back and putting less people of quality that would come forward. That is the problem. And you want to frighten people away from that, you carry on down that step. And that's the problem. Give them dignity. Will you take that to the civil service? Will you take it to the chief of police? Will you take it to the National Health Service? Will they all have to declare their tax returns? I don't think so. So let's do it properly.
Well, Khalid, you know I'm pulling your leg about you having something to hide, but I take your point. Something very unusual has happened, which is that Anne Widdecombe is agreeing with the Labour MP. Anne, what's going on?
Well, I can tell you exactly what's going on. For once in a blue moon, a Labour MP is talking complete good sense. I mean, what has been said covers it all. I've hardly anything to add, except that I think the most important part of what we've just heard is this, that we do lack quality in Parliament. We do lack people of quality. And if you're to get them in, you won't do that by holding up every single bus ticket to ridicule, by wanting to know every last detail of their private lives, by wanting to see their tax returns. If there is something amiss with a tax return, leave that to HMRC. That's what HMRC is for. No, of course MPs shouldn't have to publish their tax returns. If that had been brought in when I was there, I would have said, right, here is one tax return for you to see so that you can see there's nothing wrong with my affairs at all, and now I'm off. That's what I would have said. Be careful.
However, Anne, it's good enough for the US president to publish his or her tax returns, the greatest democracy on earth.
Holding guns is good enough for America. All the citizens have got guns or can have guns. That's good enough for America. All sorts of things are good enough for America that I sincerely hope we will continue to resist here. And, you know, there is no need for us to publish our tax returns just because, you know, the President of the United States publishes his. Now, if an MP wants to publish his or her tax returns, that's entirely up to that MP. But certainly there should be no requirement at all. You're going to put good people off, and they're already put off enough as it is. Look around
Khalid Mahmood, I accept what you've said there about the idea that it could be a disincentive to high achievers from entering Parliament. And I agree with you there. We've got to attract the great and the good, just like your good self. You make a significant contribution to public life as the Member of Parliament for Birmingham Perry Barr. Does that mean that you'll defend Nadeem Zahawi because he's made it clear he has no case to answer at this point and should keep his job?
The issue with Nadeem is that HMRC has raised this particular issue and it's been dealt with, and therefore it's right once the issue has been raised for people to ask for an inquiry into that, and that's exactly what's happening. So if there's a particular issue raised through investigative journalism or other issue information that comes forth, then you ask for that information. And at the moment, I think we're dealing with that. We'll see if the standards body investigates that or not, and if it doesn't, it stays as it is.
OK, so, I mean, what's your instinct with Nadeem Zahawi at the moment, Khalid? Do you think that he should stay in post?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think it should be investigated properly, and there's no untoward issues are found. Then he should stay. If he has been compromised, then he should be held to task.
Do you buy, Anne Widdecombe, the idea that Mr. Zahawi simply made a mistake? It was an oversight.
I don't need to buy it or not buy it because I do not know. And the only people who know the details of his tax affairs are HMRC. Now, what are you going to suggest next, Mark? Should we all publish our bank statements, so that people can see what we've got in the bank? It is absolute invasion of privacy. Now, if he's done something wrong, there is a standards committee, there's HMRC itself, there's all of that can be done. But when it comes to prying into MPs' personal affairs, we have got to learn to stop. It's not our business. How can I judge? How can I judge whether he's done something wrong? What a daft question, with all due respect, Mark, to ask me. What we know, Anne, I appreciate the correction. I defer to your eternal wisdom, but the bottom line is he's had to write a 7-figure cheque to HMRC. It's not a great look, is it, for the chairman of the Conservative Party? Whether it was a mistake or not, many will just think this guy's got a team of accountants. He was Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's clearly not fit for high office. Now, that is a complete nonsense. There are all sorts of reasons why people come to a different conclusion from HMRC. It is quite normal when you're talking about figures at that level for people to argue with HMRC. And that is perfectly permissible. But at the end of the day, it will be HMRC who decides. And they haven't said that they're referring the matter to the courts, that this is a case of tax evasion. They haven't said that. So why would we presume to say it?
Indeed, but we're potentially talking about £4 or £5 million, Anne. And this is a man that just a few months ago was Chancellor of the Exchequer. How can he neglect to pay that sort of amount of money, given the resources at his disposal? And this was a man that was responsible for the country's finances.
£4 or £5 million is Toy Town money to me. Maybe it's Toy Town money to you. But Zahawi is rich. And it won't have that sort of order of magnitude, comparatively speaking, for him. But I don't care whether it's a large sum or a tiny one. All that I observe is that if there had actually been serious tax evasion or non-disclosure or something of that sort, HMRC would almost certainly, on that scale, refer it to the courts. They haven't done so.
Anne, a quick word before you go. Does this story present the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, with a problem and a dilemma? Ought he be seen to do something?
I think it will present him with a problem because, it's a PR disaster, whatever else can't be said for it. And he's going to be asked all sorts of awkward questions, and he doesn't know anything about Nadeem's tax affairs any more than I do. So he's got to speak on the basis of what he's been told, not on the basis of what he thinks. So, yes, he is going to have a problem. And yes, as ever, whenever there's a question about the finances of a high-ranking Conservative, there's always the old allegation of Tory sleaze. But it really doesn't follow. And what I would actually like to see at some stage is some senior politician just turn round and say to your profession, not you, Mark, but your profession, OK, that's enough. We are suing. And he would be able to sue big time if he's done nothing wrong. So be careful.
Anne, a delight to have you on the programme. We'll see you in a week's time. My thanks to Anne Widdecombe and Labour MP Khalid Mahmood, who we lost the line to, but we'll speak to him very soon. Next up is the city of San Francisco right to pay every victim of slavery $5 million each. We'll discuss that next.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. How about this in response to our debate? Should MPs publish their tax returns? Can the offspring of the Highland clearances have the same, please? That, of course, is in relation to the slavery debate that we're about to have. So let's do it right now. Reacting to the big stories of the day, actress and comedian Sajila Kershi, broadcaster and columnist Ali Miraj, and political and social commentator Lynn May. San Francisco's Reparation Committee have proposed that every eligible black citizen in the city should receive a $5 million payout, a total bill of at least $50 billion. The city's residents will be eligible if they can prove to the authorities that they are descendant from a 19th century black slave. So is the city of San Francisco right to pay every victim of slavery $5 million each? Ali?
No, they're absolutely wrong. And they're wrong for a simple reason. Look, slavery was an absolute... it was an abhorrent thing, and it's totally unforgivable. That's clear. But there was no history of slavery in this state. And what are we trying to do here? You're basically compensating people who are now not slaves, and that money is going to have to come from people who did not actually put them into slavery either. So it's an issue going back generations. And I think fundamentally here, Mark, the problem is that we're inculcating a real victim mentality, which removes agency from people to actually take control of their own lives. There are serious issues in the US around people from the black community not achieving economically what they should be, and there are maybe several issues for that. I don't believe that structural racism is everywhere, but there are issues to deal with. So there are race issues, but seeing structural racism everywhere is a nightmare. And one of your colleagues, your former colleagues, Inaya Fuller and Iman, she set up this thing called the Equiano Project. I was there in Cambridge listening to academics from both sides of the pond, people like John McWhorter from Columbia, Glenn Lowry from Brown, serious figures saying that this kind of mentality that's being inculcated here is deeply unhelpful. It removes agency from people to change their fortunes, change their lives for the better by simply seeing people as victims. And what you're going to have now is other groups there are going to say, well, hang on, what about us? What about we're Native Americans? Why aren't we getting compensation?
They did.
Right? So there are going to be different groups. What you're trying, instead of trying to bring people together here and remove any race issues that may exist, and there are race issues that exist, I don't think we can deny that, but seeing structural racism around every corner is deeply unhelpful, and you inculcate division rather than try and see beyond that.
What do you think, Lynn May?
I think you're conflating a lot of things here. You saying, not everyone was a slave and so on and so forth, then I'll pose two questions to you. So when the British decided to abolish slavery, which they did, brilliant, they had to compensate the slave owners. And we recently stopped paying in 2015 via our taxes to compensate the slave owners. So if you believe, OK, it was a long time ago, I want my tax back, because you're saying there's an argument to be had as to why people that had nothing to do with slavery, and I agree, should have to pay this, and it's going to cause division. But I, as a descendant from slavery, my taxes went on compensating my forefathers' slave owners. So if that's the case, why then? And one thing I'll have to agree, from a fiscal point of view, it doesn't make sense. If every single black person in San Francisco is to receive 5 million, that's 50 billion, they cannot afford it. However, there's an argument to be said, if we can find billions for Ukraine and we can find billions for everything else, and the Germans found billions for the Jewish communities, why can't we have some of that?
Okay, so why can't I have reparations for the fact that my parents originally come from Pakistan, and the British made an absolute hash of it when there was a partition, with over 1 million people dying?
My mother's from Pakistan, I totally agree.
So I'm not calling for reparations.
You're owed loads of money. Well, this is it, from each end.
Slavery not a global trade as well?
No.
And associated with every empire?
I completely
You could go back 1,000 years.
I completely agree with that. I'm not saying, it's something that... It's abhorrent if it doesn't happen. I've conceded to the idea it may not happen. It's not going to hold me back in life. I'm going to do well. I don't care if it doesn't happen. But if there is something that can aid or produce money for the descendants of people that were faced with slavery, why can that not happen? Why would anyone be angry at that? If you're angry at that, then you should be angry at Germany also compensating the Jewish community. Why could they get compensation?
How is it helping? How is it helping people now, descendants of slavery? How is it going to help them with job opportunities, with education? How is it going to help them with their lives now?
I think there's a middle ground here, OK? Yes.
2.5 million?
Yeah, 2.5 million, which goes to me because I also, have a trauma from partition, generational trauma. And if Ali gets money, I'm telling you now, I'm going to be fighting him for that money, right? So, but I think there is a middle ground. I think this is ridiculous. You can't give this much money out like individuals, and the people. It's very undignified. You have to queue up and show that you were a child.
I don't mind that. If
these individuals might not.
You're going to get 5 million.
These individuals, San Francisco has poverty. These individuals might not be the poorest citizens of San Francisco.
Exactly. So you don't know. I don't know how you do it. However, I do think there needs to be a lot more done for the black communities in America, which is racist. I'm sorry, Ali. I disagree with you. In fact, I think we've got all the diversity, inclusion things. I think that should be happening in America. America needs a lot more.
But we're importing a lot of that. The issue about structural racism is imported from America, but we are different from America. We don't have the same story as America.
In America, you still do need to help fix the problem that was caused years ago. However, I don't think you can go back to history and fix problems. You need to fix.
It's not about it fixing problems.
You need to fix what's happening now with those communities.
Yeah, I agree. You said, Ali, what would it do? Is it going to increase jobs? I agree. But if I lose my leg today and I ask for compensation, it's not going to bring me my leg back, but I want to be compensated.
Yeah, but you were talking about your great ancestors' legs here. You're not talking about your legs.
Yeah.
Right, on that basis,
but do you think that hasn't affected us?
No. But lots of things may have affected me in the fact that there was a partition.
And if you can get some money from it...
But why would I? No.
Then you should be able...
What about slavery that's happening today? What about teenagers mining for lithium in the Congo?
Yeah, absolutely disgusting. And okay,
surely is that where the resources should go?
Where I would support Ali is that they are lining up to say we can prove that we were a part. Where does that stop then? Who gets it? And there was an economist, I said this before, there was an economist that said, if all of the descendants of the... Because it's so many years now, I agree, it should have been done ages ago. There's so many descendants now. It would completely and utterly bankrupt the West. So that's no use to me because I'm in the West. So I agree, it doesn't financially make sense.
OK.
But if it can happen, why not? I'll be in line.
Fascinating debate. This show's all about opinions. What's yours? Mark at gbnews.uk. My Mark Meets guest is one of the most experienced politicians in the country. Lord Peter Lilly served under Margaret Thatcher and John Major. What does he think of Rishi Sunak? Is he happy with how Brexit is playing out? He's after 10. Next up, should King Charles have a budget coronation? We'll be asking a sitting Member of Parliament. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Well, a big response to our debate about whether or not the city of San Francisco in America are right to pay descendants of slavery $5 million each by way of apology. That is proposed legislation. Susan says, hi, Mark. People never mentioned that African leaders sent out their own gangs into the villages to round up young black people who were sold to the slave traders. Also, this from Tim. Hi, Mark. Do we get reparations from Italy because we were enslaved by the Romans? Yes, this is clearly a complex issue that requires a bit more reflection and certainly more debate. We'll return to that very soon, no doubt. But let's move on now. The coronation of King Charles III, an historic occasion. It will show the best of Britain. A wonderful ceremony, history and the steady guiding hand that is our constitutional monarchy. Plus, I think you'll agree, it's brilliant theatre. But during these hard times of high inflation and the cost of living crisis, should King Charles have a budget coronation? Should he do it on the cheap? I'm delighted to welcome to the programme to discuss this Conservative MP for Lincoln, Carl McCartney. Hello, Carl. How are you today?
I'm all right, and good evening to you, Mark, and to all your viewers, and a belated Happy New Year to you.
Well, you too. Let's make it a good one. Hopefully your government will help in that matter. We'll certainly have a good May, won't we? The coronation, come what may, will be a wonderful occasion. But should it be done on a budget?
I'm sure there will be budgetary considerations, but it shouldn't be done on a budget. It's not like we have a coronation every year, is it? And the last one we had was 70 years ago. So I think whatever it takes, as far as I'm concerned, and I think the vast majority of the population of this country will be very happy to see a coronation that's...
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. The line is a little beset with gremlins. But do you not think, though, that the spectacle, if it's too opulent, could jar for many at home who are struggling to feed their families and heat their homes?
I think not just the king, but I think all those people around our new king of the country situation at this point in time, and there'll be all sorts of planning that's been taking place for quite some time and is ongoing at this point in time. And I'm sure it won't be opulent, but it will be a spectacle fit for a king, of course, and it will be a showcase of the UK for the rest of the world.
What is in it for us to spend all of that money on this ceremony? I mean, is it really just an advert for UK PLC? Is that what we get out of it? Are we getting bang for our buck?
I'm sure we will be doing, but that's not the be all and end all. It's a very traditional ceremony, and it's something that is very important, not just to those obviously personally involved, but obviously to our nation. We still have a regent, a king, and our new king is obviously going to be coronated, and that's something to celebrate. And I think the whole country will come together at that point in time for that long weekend that we're going to have. And it will be a chance to celebrate the new reign of King Charles III, but also obviously to show the millions and perhaps probably billions of viewers around the world what the UK has to offer.
Now, listen, it would be remiss of me whilst you're here, Carl McCartney, not to raise one or two political issues. First of all, your response to the Prime Minister forgetting to wear his seatbelt.
Well, if you must raise some political issues, Mark, then feel free. Obviously, we all make lapses at times, I'm sure. And I very interesting saw a video of Sir Keir Starmer sitting in a taxi, I think it was, without his seatbelt on, making a political video. He's apologised. He's been fined by the police, rightfully so, and I'm sure we'll move on. But it's a mistake that I hope he and the people around him won't make again.
He's made a mistake, but I don't think it's exactly the Watergate scandal. Do you think our politics are getting increasingly trivial?
Yeah, there's a lot of gotcha about things, isn't there? So I think it is a little bit trivial. It's obviously there's safety concerns, and we have to lead by example as politicians. But we're all human, and I'm not going to say in the heat of the moment, but obviously it seemed a good time that they had perhaps a long journey to do. So he thought he'd make the best use of it by doing a video to inform some people about what he was up to and some messages that he wanted to get out there on social media. Your
party chairman is only human too. Of course, Nadeem Zahawi, the Conservative Party chairman and ex-chancellor, he's had to write a cheque to HMRC. They've accepted that it was an oversight or a mistake. Does he stay in post?
I would hope so, because he's a very good man, and he's been a very successful man in business. And obviously, we see that by the amount of the money that's involved. But it's between him and HMRC, and as your previous guest, Anne Widdecombe, somebody who I worked with 30 odd years ago,
Wow.
and drove round in my red Triumph Spitfire around the streets of Maidstone back in the early 90s. Between MPs and the HMRC, as it is with everybody else in this country. We all have to do our tax returns, and MPs are no different. We do our tax returns as well, and HMRC look at those, investigate those that they want to, and should tax be owed, then obviously the individuals need to pay that, whether they be politicians or otherwise. Sometimes those individuals of having HMRC pay them back some of the tax if they've paid too much over the year. That's obviously not the case in Nadim's situation, but yeah.
Can Rishi Sunak win you the next election and help you secure your seat as the Member of Parliament for Lincoln?
Well, obviously, I hope so. I'll be doing my best to ensure that I'm returned as the Conservative candidate and continue as the Conservative Member of Parliament. And we're doing the best of that. I had a great end of the week with the Levelling Up fund announced for Lincoln of 20 million for a new bridge over the railway to join Tritton Road and the one area of the city that hasn't been developed as yet. So that's good for the city and good for my constituents. And that's come through a Conservative government with a policy of levelling up. And that comes on top of lots of other things like the Towns Fund, where all sorts of projects are going ahead across the city centre and the outskirts of Lincoln as well to ensure that my constituents have the benefits of a Conservative government. And if they hadn't, they wouldn't have voted for me and returned me as the Member of Parliament. It seems a lifetime ago now, doesn't it? But just over 3 years ago.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's been a long 3 years. Next time you're on, you'll have to tell us more about you, Anne Widdecombe and a Spitfire. But for now, Carl McCartney, thank you so much for joining us, giving up your time on a Sunday night. Fascinating conversation. Well, we've got more of that because my Mark Meets guest is Lord Peter Lilly, served under Margaret Thatcher and John Major. But next, in my Take at 10, Edinburgh removes all meat from school dinners. My response.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
It's 10 o'clock and this is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, in just a moment, as the city of Edinburgh removes all meat from school dinners, I'll be asking why we're making children the guinea pigs of this plant-based experiment. Kids need a square meal at lunchtime, and that involves meat. My Mark Meets guest is Lord Peter Lilly, a political icon and life peer who served as a cabinet minister in the governments of Margaret Thatcher and John Major. In the news agenda with my panel, should couples that split up return the engagement ring? And is the term mummy offensive? Find out more on that shortly. Plus tomorrow's papers at 10:30, but first the headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Mark, thank you. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. Police in LA are investigating 2 white vans believed to be connected to the suspect of a mass shooting in California. Police have said the suspect, believed to be Asian and aged between 30 and 50 years old, should be considered armed and dangerous. At least 10 people were killed when a gunman opened fire at a Lunar New Year festival in the city of Monterey Park near Los Angeles. 10 others were also injured in the attack, and at least one of those is in a critical condition. The LA County Sheriff says his team are doing all they can to try to identify a body found in one of the vans.
I want to address also that there is a tactical incident that's occurring in the city of Torrance that is being covered. People have asked, is that your suspect? We don't know. We believe there is a person inside of that vehicle. We don't know their condition, but we're going to handle that in the safest manner that we possibly can to try and identify that person.
A cabinet minister has told GB News Nadeem Zahawi has the Prime Minister's support following allegations about his tax affairs. The Conservative Party chairman's admitted he reached a settlement with HMRC, believed to be almost £5 million, following an error over a multi-million-pound shareholding in the polling company YouGov. Labour has called his position untenable, but Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says he believes Mr Zahawi has paid his taxes.
I don't know any more details than what he has already put in the public domain. I don't think it would be right or proper for me to speculate or guess about any further details about his tax affairs. But he has been a successful entrepreneur, building a company which has paid tax, employing people who have paid taxes, and he has himself paid tax, a considerable amount, because he's been successful.
At least 380 migrants have arrived in the UK on 10 small boats overnight, making it the busiest day of Channel crossings so far this year. GB News understands a few other small boats have also set off this morning, but they haven't yet made it to the UK. The boats were monitored by French naval vessels, which only intervene if the migrants get into difficulties. Today's arrivals bring the total number of those crossing the Channel this year to 530. TV, online and DAB Plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan Tonight.
Thanks, Tatiana. We'll see you in an hour. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Big stories, big guests, and always big opinions. In the news agenda with my panel, should couples that split up return the engagement ring, or do you keep everything? And is the term mummy offensive? The term mummy, that's right. We'll discuss that later, find out more as to why some people are bothered by it, quite triggered. Plus, tomorrow's papers at exactly 10:30 sharp with full panel reaction. And my Mark Meets guest. Live in the studio is Lord Peter Lilly, a political icon and life peer who has served as cabinet minister under the governments of both Margaret Thatcher and John Major. Looking forward to that. Lots to get through, a busy hour to come, but first, my take at 10. If you thought school dinners weren't bad enough, as it is, the great city of Edinburgh is to deprive school-aged children of proper protein by removing meat from their plate. The city has voted to adopt a plant-based treaty, including a pledge to remove all meat products from those in hospitals, schools and nursing homes. They will instead enjoy a vegan menu. As the Mail newspaper dryly points out, the move comes days before Burns Night, the centrepiece of which is haggis, traditionally made from a sheep's liver, lungs, heart and intestines. And this is Scotland we're talking about, one of the most beautiful countries in the world, which boasts some of the very finest natural produce: Aberdeen Angus beef, succulent Scotch lamb, and of course, the ultimate delicacy, the square sausage. Well, whoever thought of taking meat off children's menus is a silly sausage themselves. It's my view that we all need meat to thrive and survive, including in hospitals and nursing homes. But it's particularly true for children. They are growing, so they need the amino acids in meat to make that happen. Meat is a so-called complete protein, naturally and easily absorbed by the body for optimum nutrition. For schools in the city of Edinburgh to go plant-based will turn children into vegetables. How can they concentrate all day long and learn on a diet of couscous, broccoli and bean sprouts? Now, the city of Edinburgh will no doubt argue that this policy will reduce carbon emissions, curtail animal cruelty, and that the children will get their protein, vitamins and a fabulous square meal from a plant-based alternative. The meals might even be quite tasty. Many would argue that plant-based is in fact healthier than meat. I know plenty of vegans who tell me they feel brilliant. But if I was a parent of an Edinburgh child who was sat there picking away at a soy burger or a couple of Beyond Meat rashers of bacon, it would leave a bad taste in my mouth. In my view, the scientific case for meat in children is overwhelming. Don't take my word for it. Just a year ago, researchers found that children aged 5 to 10 who ate plant-based diets are on average 3 centimetres shorter than those who eat meat. Their bones were also smaller and less strong, putting the children at risk of fractures or osteoporosis in later life. The study by University College London's Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health said vegan children should be given vitamin B12 and vitamin D supplements to reduce potentially long-term health consequences of being raised on plants. There you go, folks. A diet so good, you need supplements. I believe that the rise in plant-based is nothing more than a gold rush for the processed food industry. And whatever happened to parental choice in this whole matter? If my kids went to an Edinburgh school, they'd be going in with sausages smuggled in their socks, steaks smuggled in their sneakers, and a leg of lamb in their long johns. Let's stop kids being guinea pigs in this plant-based experiment. After all, if you don't fight for their right to eat meat, you'll be next. This move from the city of Edinburgh is hard to stomach. It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, showbiz and beyond. Tonight, the Right Honourable, the Lord Lilly. Peter Lilly, one of the most experienced politicians in the country, who sat in the House of Commons as a Member of Parliament for over 3 decades. from 1983 to 2017. And in that time, he served as a cabinet minister in the governments of both Margaret Thatcher and John Major as Trade and Industry Secretary and Social Security Secretary, respectively. He has been a long-time critic of the European Union and backed Brexit in 2016. And in May 2018, he was nominated for a peerage in the House of Lords, where he sits to this day. Lord Lilly, Peter Lilly, welcome to Mark Dolan tonight.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to have you on the programme. A great privilege as well. As I mentioned before we went on air, I watched you with keen interest as a politics student in the 90s. I was at Edinburgh Uni, by the way, where we still got a proper meat-based meal.
In those days, but I suspect if you'd said anything too nice about me in your essays, you'd have been marked down. And
most certainly. I wouldn't have got that coveted tutu. So, Peter, let's get started. Why did you enter politics in the first place?
I was always fascinated by politics as a child. For no obvious reason, my parents weren't at all political, and didn't think it would be possible ever to get into Parliament. But it was sort of something I dreamt of, but I assumed you had to be born into the right sort of milieu and family and have connections. Then at university, I saw people ahead of me, the slightly older Cambridge generation, people like Ken Clark.
Well, you're part of the Cambridge mafia.
I'm the tail end of it.
Michael Howard, Ken Clark.
Michael Howard, Norman Lamont, Ken Clark, and so on. And I always thought they were terrifically self-confident. I couldn't quite do as well as them, so I didn't do anything. But I thought it must be possible to do better in the long run. And eventually I saw they were making progress, and I thought, well, actually, in this country, it is a free country. If you really want to be in Parliament, and you're not entirely stupid, and even some people who are entirely stupid, you can get in if you're determined enough. So it took me a long time. I didn't get in until I was nearly 40.
But did you contest Tottenham in 74?
I did. I fought Tottenham, and Tottenham fought back.
Right, yes. But that would have been a good political education, I would have thought.
Oh, it was, enormously.
Yeah. A Labour stronghold.
Absolutely.
Indeed. And I wonder, what shaped your political outlook? Was it your parents, was it your upbringing, or was it just life in the 70s?
I think it was, well, no, my views were sort of naturally conservative, even when I was a child, even though I can remember asking my father, what were we, when I heard there was a difference between Labour and Conservative. And he said, well, nothing really, that he'd been a radical before the war, but fought in the Navy and just sort of made him reconciled to king and country. But they didn't have any strong political views. Indeed, my mother thought politics was the most disreputable thing you could possibly do. And when I finally became an MP, she was simultaneously very proud, but said to her friends, isn't it a shame he can't be an MP without being a politician?
Yes, indeed. I mean, that's a rare breed, isn't it? And if you're going to do that, you probably won't get very far, will you? You certainly won't get into the cabinet.
No.
So, and what about the 70s and, how life was? I mean, how bad was it for Britain in the 70s, pre-Thatcher, 75, and then leading up to the winter of discontent in 78 into 79?
Well, it was very grim indeed. We had the 3-day week when, we have problems now, but when there wasn't enough electricity to keep industry going for more than 3 days a week, that was pretty disastrous. My now wife, then I didn't know her, but she had to run a clothing business in those days when you could only get staff in the days you had the electricity to run the sewing machines and so on, and you had to keep them there as long as possible. So that was a disaster. Then you had strikes in a whole range of things. We were the slowest growing country in Europe, major country in Europe, for that combination of state control of industry. We had more nationalised industries than most. We had a higher rate of inflation than most. We had a higher level of unemployment than most, and we had strikes and disorder.
Inflation topped out in the over 20%.
25%.
And then, of course, the pay rises were going in a similar direction, weren't they? Harold Wilson agreeing to 15, 20, 25% pay rises.
Well, he had to, even though we'd moved to total control by the state of every price, wage, salary, dividend in the economy. And actually, that's when I got to know Geoffrey Howe, who's the Minister for Prices and Consumer Affairs. And he said he realised the whole thing was mad when he was asked as a minister to decide on the price of a charity ticket to a fete outside Cambridge. And you can't run an economy like that. We had to scrap all that, return to a free economy and control inflation by controlling the money supply and monetary demand.
And the person...
Something we ought to have remembered during the COVID issue.
Indeed. Well, let's develop that. What is your appraisal of the COVID response, the lockdowns and the other measures that we saw?
Well, they were a huge mistake, but it was compounded. But it was sort of understandable that you might be so terrified of what this disease was going to do, that you would have to lock down. But once you decided to lock down and stop people working, the Bank of England said, that's created a recession. What do you do in recessions? You print lots of money to get out of it. But this was the first recession ever that was caused by suppressing supply, not by inadequate demand. So when they opened up again, there was too much money in the economy, and that's created the subsequent inflation. It's made a bit worse by the Ukraine war, but it would have happened anyway.
Yes, and would you sort of say that actually the response from the government was quite unconservative? Because if you look to the Swedish approach, it was to give citizens the information about the virus, let them know that here's the risk and you can wear a mask or you don't have to wear a mask, go to work, don't go to work. But it was individual choice, self-determination, responsibility for your own welfare. Ought we have taken that route?
We should have done, certainly with the benefit of hindsight. And even at the time, there were plenty of people saying that. And actually, to his credit, Boris's initial desire was not to lock down, but to do it. And the sort of basic game plan was that you couldn't control diseases by locking down. And they eventually were more or less bounced into it by absurd projections that we'd all be dead 3 times over. And they took the decision to lock down, and that became the new norm, the doctrine. Any new variant came along, it's locked down again. And again, Boris did take the decision to end lockdown earlier than most other countries, which was one of the things he can be proud of.
You served under Margaret Thatcher. Would she have folded to Sage in the same way that Boris Johnson did?
She wouldn't, for 2 reasons. One, her personality, and the other, she was a scientist by training. And she'd have challenged these so-called scientists who were simply, drawing a line through a few points and extrapolating into the middle distance. And she'd have challenged it. That was her great strength. She loved to argue, and she tested any proposal for a policy by arguing to destruction. People thought she was being arrogant. She wasn't. She was seeing whether you got any comeback. If you could respond to her arguments and convince her that you were right and she was wrong, she'd take your policies on board. And she'd have given a really tough time to those scientists who were trying to urge lockdowns as much for political reasons, for any scientific reason.
I think a devastating appraisal there. I find it hard to disagree with Lord Peter Lilly, who returns in just a couple of minutes. More about what it was like serving under Margaret Thatcher, also the major years as well. What does Lord Lilly make of Rishi Sunak? Can we sort out the Northern Ireland Protocol? Does he have Brexit buyer's regret? And will we ever crack the issue of illegal immigration? All of that to come. Lord Peter Lilly live in the studio. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight. The papers in just a few minutes, but still with me, one of the most experienced politicians in the country, a man who served in the cabinet under Margaret Thatcher and John Major, Lord Peter Lilly. So, Peter, let's talk about Margaret Thatcher. You caught the tail end of her prime ministerial career as Trade and Industry Secretary. So you served under her for a few months, but you knew her well in advance of that.
Yes, I'd somehow come to her attention before I ever got into Parliament. And she's...
So late 70s, early 80s.
And she came and had lunch with my senior partner in my firm, where I was a partner. Oh, well, I wasn't at that stage partner. And said, could you second Peter to research department so that he can write speeches and policy papers? And my boss said, well, no, actually, we need him. And she, in her forceful way, said, well, couldn't you do a deal? Half his time for me and half for you. 3.5 days a week for you, 3.5 days a week for me. She assumed everybody worked 7-day a week. In the end, a sort of compromise was worked out where I worked for her in the evenings and weekends, and I continued to work my firm during the day.
And what do you know about Margaret Thatcher that we don't?
Well, I was saying beforehand how she tests an idea by arguing against it. And if you went to her, as when I got into Parliament, I was used to it, but when I got into Parliament, her closest supporters, the No Turning Back group, invited her to dinner to discuss a policy paper we produced. She came to dinner and she tore it to shreds, and we came back with counter-arguments. She tore them to shreds, we came back with counter-arguments. And then she left and everybody was stunned, and they said, it's true what she says, what they say about her, she's arrogant, she doesn't listen, and so on. And I said, but we won the argument. They said, that makes it worse. I said, no, we won the argument. She knows we won the argument. She's now going back to give hell to the officials who gave a bad briefing, and she duly took on board our policy ideas. But she often left the impression she wasn't listening, but she was. She was testing to see, you know, Mark, was that a good argument? No. And if your arguments were persuasive, she took them on board. And that's a very good way of governing, actually. She possibly could have done it in a slightly more ameliorative tone so that people didn't feel hurt, but never take aboard a policy until you really looked at every conceivable weakness. And then when you've sorted it, that it's strong, and you know the problems that you're going to face, then put 100% of your weight behind it. And she did that with incredible energy and commitment. And that's why she was so successful.
And she was a tough boss, but you served under her, and then you were served under John Major as the Social Security Secretary for 5 years. So a substantial cabinet career. And now the country faces parallel challenges that Thatcher faced in '79. Luckily, mercifully low unemployment, but high inflation, a cost of living crisis, and also massive debt. So Rishi Sunak, is he the man to tackle these problems? What's your judgment of Sunak? Is he a good Prime Minister?
I think he is. I think, just in the privacy of this room, if I were asked to offer him advice, I'd say the one thing you need to learn from Mrs. Thatcher is to have fire in your belly. He is very like her. He's cautious. He looks at problems in great detail before he commits himself. But once he's committed himself, he needs to show more enthusiasm for what he's doing and sound less like, the family accountant, if your family has an accountant.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So I think he'll learn that. He's only been there a few weeks.
Do you think he's got the character, the backbone that Thatcher did? Because that's the ultimate quality that's needed, especially at this moment, isn't it? Because he's going to have to battle the unions and he's going to have to face down many interest groups in order to pursue his vision for the economy.
Well, that's judging by an incredibly high standard. Mrs. Thatcher was the greatest peacetime Prime Minister we've ever had, I suspect, at least since Lord Salisbury at the turn of the century before last. But he's undoubtedly the best person we've got in the political spectrum, I think, to run the country at the moment. And it's a shame that we had that sort of interlude where he wasn't elected and then he was. And we'd have been a bit ahead of the game if that hadn't occurred. But no, he's a very good, very intelligent, very nice man. And once he's got fire in the belly, I think he'll start climbing up the opinion polls.
You've been a Eurosceptic for decades. How do you feel Brexit is going, and can that Northern Ireland Protocol be resolved?
Well, the ultimate purpose of Brexit was to take back control of our laws so that we can mould them to our own needs. We'll either do that well or badly. The trouble is, not that we've done it well or badly, but we haven't done enough of it. We've only just started. We've begun to. We've got the Financial Services and Markets Bill this week, which is reforming the rules of our biggest industry to shed some of the cumbersome weight that the European regulations put on it and make us back competitive with New York, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Before that, we had the Precision Breeding Bill. It sounds very technical, but it's supported by not only by the agricultural industry, but all the other parties, which will enable our industry to use the processes developed in our laboratories to breed plants precision designed for what we need. And that was banned in Europe. We'll give a head start there. So things are beginning to happen, slow, too late, but they're moving in the right direction. Even things like, you remember about a year and a half ago, we had that great shortage of lorry drivers. Where's it all gone? Partly because we changed half a dozen rules that we couldn't have changed if we'd been in the EU. Plus, people put up pay of lorry drivers. And there's, that basic crisis has disappeared.
So you don't have any buyer's remorse whatsoever. What about that protocol? I mean, that's another test of Rishi Sunak's political backbone, isn't it?
It is. And I'm worried when I hear talk about some sort of half-baked compromise that doesn't replace it. It was a temporary agreement. The EU said they couldn't enter into a permanent agreement on trade under Article 50 when we left. That had to be done after we left. But they put that thing in the Article 50 departure terms to deal with the possibility there wouldn't be any trade agreement between us and the EU and to ensure that there weren't any problems at the border. Right, we don't want any infrastructural controls at the border, and we've got to help the EU protect its own market from any goods which we don't regulate in the same way as they do. We can do that quite easily by simply passing a law saying it is illegal to export from Northern Ireland any goods which don't conform to EU standards and regulations. And we wouldn't have to enforce it at the border, enforce it like all export controls, and we have export controls on quite a lot of things, at the point of dispatch in the factory that makes it or in the warehouse that sends it.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Where there's a will, there's a way, and there's an opportunity. And that basic idea was put forward by former Director General of the EU, so he knows about EU law, and a couple of professors of European law, one American, one Italian, and dismissed out of hand by the EU, even though it had such impeccable EU credentials. We've just got to stand up to them and say, sorry, you said the original agreement's temporary, we're calling a close on that, and we want to do something which is we will protect your interests, we'll protect the interests of Ireland and peace there, but we're not going to divide our own country in two. Imagine if America was suddenly told that any goods going from the west coast of America up to Alaska had to go through Canadian controls.
For the birds. Good luck with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or from France to Corsica had to go through some.
Yes.
It just wouldn't happen.
And it's a great injustice for the people of Northern Ireland. We've got the papers coming. The clock's against us, Lord Peter Lilly. We could talk to you all night. Briefly, if you can, I won't hold you to this, but it's crystal ball time. The date and the outcome of the next election. Today.
Well,
I mean, I don't mean if it was today, but we anticipate 2 years max.
Well,
and it won't be January.
The latest it can be is January 2025. But there's a basic rule in British politics that the government of the day calls an election in the first Thursday in the last year when it's ahead in the opinion polls. And it's probably going to be quite late before we're high enough in the opinion polls to risk calling an election. So it will be at the end, whether or not we'll win, I don't know. It's clearly, if we had one tomorrow, we'd lose.
Brilliant. Lord Peter Lilly, do come and see us again soon. Most fascinating conversation. Thank you for giving up a chunk of your Sunday night to tell us about your remarkable career, Lord Peter Lilly. Lots to come. Next up, we've got the papers and some quite sparkling front pages, let me tell you. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time, as always, on a Sunday night for tomorrow's front pages, and we start with The Guardian. Let's take a look at what they're leading with. And we have Britain forecast to reach £1 trillion export target for 15 years late in the wake of Brexit. Ministers have been accused of leaving a record of failure and broken promises as internal forecasts show Britain will be 15 years late in achieving its £1 trillion annual export target after being hit by Brexit. Projections from the Department for International Trade show the value of UK exports will not reach £1 trillion until 2035 based on current trends, with the total due to fall to £707 billion next year. Also, Zahawi pressure grows over tax affairs, and Johnson faces claims over BBC appointment. Boris Johnson, who made an appearance in Ukraine today, is facing conflict of interest allegations over his choice of Tory donor Richard Sharp as BBC chairman whilst he was in number 10. Dogged by scandal, and he's not even the Prime Minister anymore. The Daily Mail next. Shocking rise of something for nothing Britain. Britons are more dependent on the state than ever before, according to a bombshell report. For the first time, more than half of households, 36 million people, get more from the government than they pay in tax. This is up from 24 million, or 2/5 of households, when Tony Blair was in power. The Daily Telegraph, National Grid ready to pay customers to switch off. Households would be paid for cutting electricity use as temperatures plummet. Also, Johnson weighs in over tanks for Ukraine. Boris Johnson visits a town in Ukraine where he called for European nations to give all the tools that Ukraine needs to win, in a strong hint to Germany. Let's go to the Metro now. BBC, Boris Bank chum. Boris Johnson has popped up in war-torn Ukraine as yet another sleaze row erupts after a friend said to have helped him secure a loan of up to £800,000 when he was Prime Minister was handed a top BBC job. Also, The Sun now. Exclusive Judges' fury. Britain's Got Talent pay war. Amanda and Alicia won't sign deals over Bruno cash. Britain's Got Talent judges Amanda Holden and Alicia Dixon are refusing to sign new contracts in a pay row over Bruno Toglioni. The long-serving pair are furious that the newcomer's salary matches their own, said to be, wait for it, 850 grand. And last but not least, the Daily Star. Fury at price rises, taking the peas. Greedy food firms are being accused of cashing in on the cost of living crisis by hiking prices despite making massive profits. Tesco boss hits out at big hikes. Greedy owners are cashing in. We're being taken for a ride, say the Daily Star. And ain't that the truth? Those are your front pages. Let's get reaction to tomorrow's papers right through until 11 o'clock now with my fantastic panel. We have Sajila Kershi, Ali Miraj and Lynn May. OK, well, look, let's get straight into it. This really caught my eye, Lynn May. Shocking rise of something for nothing Britain. Over half of households get more from the state than they pay in tax. Surely that's not right. That's a broken system, isn't it?
Doesn't feel like it for me.
You always give more than you take. It's your nature.
I think it's a given. If we look at the climate we're in at the moment, you're going to have people that even would be considered to be on fairly a decent wage having to turn to the government in some way, shape or form. So I think, to be honest, this is just a non-starter conversation. The system there, we shouldn't rely on it, but it's there as a safety net for people to be able to, I wouldn't say entirely rely on, but to be assisted. Even when it comes to everyone can get this support when it comes to energy. That's not just some people, so they have to factor that in.
Sajila, I mean, I politely disagree with Lynn there. I think this is a shocker, and it's proof that the state is now too big.
I don't know. See, the thing is, it's like we always do this. It's like typical Daily Mail kind of article. Really, is like it's the benefit scroungers. And as Lynn says, there are people who are working and having to claim, but also no one said anything about all the money that was given out as handouts during the pandemic to people who were working who couldn't work. They didn't need to claim, but they claimed it. And that's never been talked about. It's always going down to the bottom of society who probably do need it. Yes, probably
well,
there is.
You can't have half of society.
No, they're not. Half of society, no, you can't. You can't. But I think it's not as many as I think it's...
What about the ageing population as well? We've got an ageing population and, like you said, oftentimes we go to, like, the benefit street conversation. But what about all those state pensions, so on and so forth?
Disability,
that could be a large percentage of it because we are living longer.
Well, we can debate the whys and wherefores, but it's a problem, Ali.
Well, I think, Mark, the biggest problem is that we are mortgaging our children's and grandchildren's futures to pay for this massive expenditure that we've got going on now. We spent $400 billion on the pandemic. I understand why we did it. I think the furlough scheme was necessary and the right thing to do. But now we've got a war going on in Ukraine and we're having to subsidise people's energy bills. Heaven knows for how long that's going to continue. and we're going to have to pay for it somehow. So I think taxes have already gone up to a 50-year high.
They can't go up much higher.
Well, that's the issue. People don't want to pay tax. I mean, even this whole discussion that happened about the national insurance for the NHS, everyone had a heart attack about 1.25% increase, and then we've got a crisis in social care. You can't get something for nothing. You've got to tax people accordingly. You've also got to grow the pie, so you've got to get the balance right. It does worry
growth,
me.
though. Do you think there's enough growth?
Well, yeah, but we're not going to get. You've also got to be realistic. Then in this environment, you can't just cut taxes a la Liz Truss. You saw how the markets reacted to that. I know you're a fan, but still, I mean, you can't, really.
She loves Trussonomics.
I do a bit.
Bring back Kwasi.
Yes, indeed. I didn't like the way it was rolled out. It was too soon, it was too sharp, but I do like the policy.
Well, you know, I remember talking about it at the time. The IMF, after the departure of Liz Truss from Number 10, and, of course, that emergency budget, the IMF said there will be a deeper recession in the UK as a result of the fact that taxes will not come down. But arguably, Jeremy Hunt's got a point that the international bond markets had stopped trusting Britain. He had to win back that trust.
Yep.
Otherwise, we would have paid a high price. So I kind of begrudgingly accepted these measures. I would like to see taxes come down at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, this is not a good metric, is it? That over half the population take more than they give.
Yeah. What would you suggest, though?
Well, I would suggest that there are many millions of people who are of working age, who don't work, who do not participate in the economy. Yeah. I think they could be encouraged to make a contribution and go out to work.
Well, particularly over 50s as well, Mark, as well, because this is something where you've got apparently 9 million people that could actually contribute to the economy, which are not doing so, and you've got hundreds of thousands of over 50s that have left the workforce during the pandemic for various reasons. They've had enough. They didn't like their jobs. They had a sort of a moment during their lives when they thought they wanted to do something different. But that is causing an economic issue right now for us, and the government's trying to get them back by encouraging them to keep some of their benefits if they go back, or just various other mechanisms they could do. The same thing applies to people who are claiming disability benefits. The government wants to try and allow them to continue to claim them, but still get into work.
But I would like to know the figures. Like, obviously, it's just like the sweeping kind of statement. What proportion of the over 50s claim? What proportion, you know, up to 25s claim? So just to get an idea of where that pocket of people not working are.
Well, I'm not even sure the over 55s are all claiming, but the issue that they've got is that a lot of people who have done their calculations based on the fact that they can retire now and not work again, may be actually in for a really rude surprise and a shock, because we're all living longer, as you said, Lynn. You go out 30 years, I mean, you might be living like a pauper because you've miscalculated. I mean, it's a long time. 50 is not very old at the moment to be retiring, to potentially live till 80 or even longer.
But also, Sajila, do you think the pandemic has compounded it? But I agree with Ali, because I was against lockdowns. But if you're going to lock people down, furlough was the right thing to do. Because you're telling people not to go to work. But it inflated in people's minds the idea of just how much the state can do. And it normalised the idea of the state paying people to stay at home.
I will agree with that. And I will agree with that. I mean, obviously, some of us didn't benefit from the furlough or any of those schemes. But I will agree with that I think that there has been a different mind shift that I think has happened. And that's worrying because...
And it's an illusion, isn't it? Because the state, we don't have the money to do that.
But also, there's also an annoyance with the state. The state is actually our enemy. And so when they are screwing up, I do think that's probably part of, like, sticking it to the man is partly kind of motivating, especially the older ones, I think, to kind of think, well, I don't need to do this. Why am I working my life to do this?
I think a lot of young people are seeing constant headlines, whether they've been exaggerated or not, that the government have, you know, spaffed this amount up the wall or on track and trace or can't recoup the 4 billion lost. Or it's like, well, if they're just wasting the money, why should we have to go and do whatever?
Exactly,
so,
the state's not leading.
Yeah, and I think the Conservative government fail to have a lot of accountability when it comes to finances. So everyone's like, well, why should I?
I've got a solution. I like solutions, OK?
Yeah.
I like answers,
I'm a solutions
questions.
girl.
Here we go. Austerity 2.0. What we do is we simply reduce government spending. That's how we fix that.
But where?
ratio.
Where do we make those cuts?
Well, there's $1 million question. Education, the NHS. I think the NHS costs too much money. It's called the biggest employer.
Are you supporting Sajid Javid then? We should pay for our GP appointment.
Saj is right to slash the throat of the sacred cow and to raise debate about the NHS.
I agree that, I think the whole issue about co-payments or contributory payments is something that needs to be looked at. The fact is that the NHS is like a national religion for us. It's beyond the pale in terms of any sort of reasoned discussion at all. We pay too much deference to it. It's not working. It's taking 44% of our day-to-day government spending, a huge amount. It was like 27% like 10 years ago. I mean, we can't continue at this rate. It needs to be reformed.
OK. Well, look, that debate will continue. Fascinating conversation, I think you'll agree. A diversity of opinion, that's what this show is all about. What's yours? Mark at gbnews.uk. Greg, what have we got next? Yeah, what have we got? Let's do a shout-out. Let's tell people what's coming. Yeah, we've got more papers.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
We've got more papers. By the way, a warm welcome to a brand new director on Mark Dolan tonight, Megan, who I think you'll agree is knocking it out the park. Have you ever seen such a technically perfect show? All those junctions. And by the way, she's going to do more of that now because, Megan, could you give me the Times newspaper, please? And their front page. See how good she is. National Grid to pay households for not turning the kettle on. Universities' risky ties to China. The Express, Boris back on the front line. Ex-PM lauded as a true friend on surprise trip to show solidarity with the Ukraine. And last but not least, the Daily Mirror, useful guide for the Tories. Earn money, pay your taxes. Using a car, wear a seatbelt. Need a loan? Go to a bank. They still don't get it. There you go. I've got to say, pretty good satirical front page there from the Mirror. And I would say, well done to their team on that one, Lizzie Buchan and the editorial team at The Mirror. The Mirror, always a good read. Let's have a look at the Eye now as well, last but not least. Energy firms hit back at prepay meter ban with threat of higher bills. We've also got the Express. No, we've done that. We've done the Express. There you go. Brilliant stuff. Those are plenty more of your front pages. Still with me reacting to the big stories of the day. I'm delighted to say we have got Sajeela Kershi. Let me tell you about Sajeela. She has a hit podcast called Dead Good, and it's all about bereavement, and it's moving but funny as well, just like Sajeela. Dead Good. And she stars in What Happened to Free Speech and Rah Rah Skirts at the Leicester Comedy Festival on the 10th of February. Meanwhile, we've also got Ali Miraj, political commentator. And Ali, I would never normally plug a rival, but you are doing a show on LBC. And because you're such a friend of the show, I'm going to mention when it's on. And it's 4 a.m. till 7 a.m, very early on Saturday and Sunday morning. So do give it a listen. And last but not least, promoting purely herself and her genius, writer and broadcaster Lynn Day. There we are. OK, folks, let's have a look at some more of these stories. Lynn, what do you think about the idea of the National Grid paying you money for not switching on the kettle? Sounds good, doesn't it?
I'm kind of balanced on this one because I think if people start moaning about this, you'll hardly even realise.
OK.
So if it could help, fair enough. But then I think, why should we have to do that? They should sort out how they do things. Why should we have to pay for not... Why should we have to turn off our heating?
It feels a little incoherent, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
But I suppose in some ways there's a logic to it. I mean, they're saying that as temperatures are expected to plummet to -2, ramping up pressure on Britain's power network, the operator is planning to ask consumers to use less electricity to help it manage supplies. So aren't we just like doing our bit to help, essentially?
Like I said, if there's an actual case for it and it can help, I see no issues with it. We won't even notice it, and I think people are going to complain just because they want to complain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tempted just to freeze to death at home, Sajeela, and then wait for the big fat check to come in.
I am owed so much money because I don't put my heating on until 6 o'clock, and I'm literally sitting there with my fingerless gloves looking like Fagin with my little blanket on, doing the typing. Yeah, oh, so cold. And so I'm owed a lot of money, guys, so if you can get in touch with me, I've been doing this for...
So tell me about this rule. So it's no heat till 6?
Yeah, no heat till 6. And so basically I will, because I think if I can last till 6, and in the evening I really do need my hot meal and, just to be warm.
What do your family think of this rather brutal...
It's me on my own. It's me. So it's a one income household.
Your son comes round.
No, so when he comes and I have to put the heating on because he's such a whinger. Yeah.
It goes back to what you said, though. Austerity, we should all be working. There's too many people not working.
Yes.
So if we're all working, we shouldn't be at home anyway. It's
but we're working from home.
Well, we already know we should be back in the office to help the local economies. So, therefore, we should be in the office.
But I am not in agreement with that. I'm not in agreement with that. I like being at home in my pyjamas and not
Ali,
having to worry.
I'll tell you what makes me nervous, OK? Because I think pre-pandemic, I'd sort of think this is a nice little agreement, a contract between the citizen and the state, or in this case, the citizen and the corporation, which is, a kindly request to use less energy so we can get through the winter. But, of course, in the pandemic, we learnt quite swiftly that what starts as a suggestion becomes an instruction. It gets coercive. So does this pave the way for future energy tyranny? Are we giving them a foot in the door?
They'll pay us, though. They said they'll pay us.
It might be, but I think we've got to recognise the fact that there is a war going on in Europe, unfortunately, and that's continuing. And you've got a situation where gas to the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Europe has been cut off. We're going to have to do something on the demand side. You've already seen massive changes in demand in Germany. They have been much more assiduous at dealing with this than we have. So we're a bit late to the party here. No one wants to do this, but we didn't build enough storage capacity either. And we don't have battery storage yet for renewable power. So in the meantime, we've got to be careful.
We do have to be careful. Do we have to be careful about language as well? The British Museum has banned the word mummy as they feel it's offensive to ancient Egyptians. The phrase now deemed politically acceptable is mummified person or mummified remains, according to museum chiefs. So is the word mummy offensive, Ali?
They're dead. I mean,
has anyone risen from the dead to say this?
We're offended.
How is it dehumanising to a mummy, which is effectively because they kind of got dehumanised when they died, so they are dead. And apparently, so I don't understand.
It's an ex-mummy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, apparently, mummy comes from the Arabic word mamaya, which is for bitumen, a balming solution. So basically, it's not,
Charming.
Yeah. So it's not offensive to dead people. It's actually, well, pick your battles, people. You either want to offend the dead people or you want to offend living Arabs.
Is it is it culturally offensive to people in Middle East?
I've never heard anyone say it. This is just, again,
George Osborne, the chair of the British Museum, has got too much time on his hands.
I think he does. Exactly right. Look, let's get to another story that's floating around. After reports that Maya Jama's ex-fiancé has sent a legal letter demanding the return of her £800,000 engagement ring, we're asking, should you give back your engagement ring if you split up with your partner, or do you keep everything? Sajila.
Oh, come on. It was a 7-month romance. One idiot for spending that much money on a 7-month romance. Like, oh, come on.
Nothing to him,
It's not going to work, guys. It's not going to work.
You know what that is? That's over £100,000 a month.
£100,000 a month. And do you know what I think? I think what you should do is it should be based... Like, if you're with them 7 months, spend 10K max, right? And if you're with them 7 years, then you want to spend £700,000. She's been waiting. You should have put a ring on her ages ago, right? So she deserves that ring. Or what you do is you upgrade the ring every 2 years, like to kind of... As a
are you saying this to all husbands then and all?
Sorry?
Are you advising this to all husbands?
I'm advising it to anyone out there. If you're going to get engaged after 7 months, just tonight, I'm just telling you from age and experience, I don't think it's going to work. Just saying that.
What was it supposed to be? From De Beers, like a certain percentage, an engagement ring, a certain percentage of your salary?
It was a month's salary back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But then he's an NBA player. What's $800,000 to him?
Yes, I mean, I would humbly suggest you keep everything. A gift is a gift, Lynn.
I do agree. But where engagement rings, I can kind of support the stance on it for the simple fact you get an engagement ring because you're about to be married.
I agree.
That's the intention. It's like an unspoken contract, isn't it? I got on the knee to give you this ring because we're going to be married, you're going to be my wife. That's no longer happening. So I think from the woman's point of view, you should naturally want to give it back.
I agree. I completely agree.
But then for a man, to me, it's not very masculine. I don't know if that's politically correct, but it's not masculine to say, well, give it back.
We're all becoming emasculated now.
Ali Mirage, you're at the Lothario of GB News. Have you got a special room in the house full of ex-girlfriends' gifts?
No. Well, I do have quite a few gifts, actually, and my past girlfriends have had great taste. But I actually think Lynn makes a good point. I don't think you should demand gifts back, but I think engagement ring is slightly different because it is on the basis that you were going to get married, and I think the lady should give it back.
But
why would you want to keep it?
It's ungallant.
This is our hooker. It's like if
they were going to get married. I mean, why would you want to keep an engagement ring when the marriage is?
You can sell it and buy other things like gas and electricity.
I think if the man broke it off, then she should keep it.
Yeah.
But if she broke it off, then that's kind of like an unspoken contract of, I don't want to marry you.
Yeah.
Here's
Don't
the
you
ring
think there's
back.
a bit of minginess to ask for it back, though?
Yeah, it's unattractive.
Please don't bring minge into this. I mean, seriously, family show. Sajila, these bloody comedians, what are they like? Can I thank my fabulous panel? But most importantly, you for your company all weekend. It's been a thrill to have you. I'm back on Friday at 8 o'clock. Looking forward to seeing you then. Keep it GB News. Well done to the team as well. Headliners is next.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's